Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Redmen TV. My name is Dan Club. I'm delighted to be joined by the adapter and the director of the superb Red or Dead, Phillip Breen. Philip, my friend, how are you? Okay.
I'm pretty good. Thanks for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. Looking forward to this one. Especially after I've already told you this in our DMs, but
Yeah,
especially after thoroughly enjoying my night at the Royal Court, Liverpool,
great.
this week. And honestly, it
Mm.
was excellent, start to finish,
Wow.
emotional, joyous, informative, everything. And like, listen, I'm not a huge lover of the theatre, nor plays, nor anything of that ilk necessarily, but it was
Sure.
exceptional. So congratulations, first and foremost. Tell us about the story and the
Oh,
journey, really, and how you got involved, how it came about. Was it an easy decision for you to want to be involved in this?
well, first of all, I mean, for not, I've been happiest with the responses I've got from non-theatre fans on the one hand and non-football fans on the other. So that's been, really satisfying. And, I don't really like much theatre either. So I could share that one with you. Um, but well, first of all, it was kind of, as a match going red, I've been going home and away for, you know, God, nearly 30 years now. Good grief. And so, so that, in a sense, that made me a kind of a prime candidate. Um, and how it came about was, I'd read The Damned United. A friend of mine for a birthday had given me a book token, just said, go out and buy The Damned United, which I did. And I thought it was incredible. I was doing a job in Glasgow, saw that he had a new book out and it was about Shankly. And I thought, well, this is sort of right up my street. And then, but saw when I bought it just how thick it was, and I read it to, I thought, well, I'll read it on the bus, probably take me a couple of months. I finished it sort of 3 or 4 days later, about 4 o'clock in the morning, with sort of tears streaming down my face, going, what a time to be alive. And I'm not really one for writing fan mail exactly, but I wrote longhand, David Peace, care of Faber. Just want to say, mate, that your book is better than the Bible and the complete works of Shakespeare put together. And like, congratulations, all the best. Anyway, so about 18 months later, I'm in Tokyo on my first job. It was all, it got proper, first scenes of Apocalypse Now / Lost in Translation. I was absolutely off my fucking head on the jet lag, walking around Shibuya in my slippers, forgetting to put my shoes on, that sort of thing. And an email popped into my inbox. It was from David saying, thanks so much for your letter of, a time ago, and been going through a tricky time in my life, but I just wanted to say thanks for it. It meant a lot, but we're very unlikely to ever meet because I live in Tokyo, Japan, which I didn't know. And then, of course, I think he normally tells that to ward off weird super fans, but it didn't work on this occasion, and we became pals. And of course, every time I read a good book, or I think maybe this because of my job, this might be make an interesting play, but it was when I kind of started to read it out loud, and I went, oh yeah, this sounds like one of the greatest plays, like kind of Under Milkwood or something like Shakespeare or something. And you read the opening lines of the novel out loud, in the wintertime, in the nighttime, they remembered him, and then they came to him in the wintertime, in the nighttime. It just sounds like the opening of the greatest play you've never read, and it was about Bill Shankly, and one of the biggest prevailing passions of mine, and of course all of your lives, Liverpool Football Club.
No, absolutely, yeah. I mean, it must have been, we'll talk about it in itself and what
Yeah.
have you in a moment, but it must have
Mm,
been
mm,
such an honor and a privilege for you to be a part
mm,
of it, not just from
mm,
sort of the
mm.
perspective of the
Yeah,
book and the players it was, but to be involved in something about Liverpool,
yeah,
but to be involved about Bill Shankly, who is so
yeah,
intertwined and
yeah,
he did the very
yeah,
foundations of what
yeah,
we are as a being. He's such a huge, significant part of that.
yeah, yeah. The honor is it. So I mean, I cut to the other night after the opening, and I got a huge hug, some tears from Karen Gill. So many of you will know, obviously one of Bill's granddaughters, who's so thank you and how much she enjoyed it, and that to me that's all the reward I need,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and the lads from Spirit of Shankly came over and gave me a little statuette of Bill, and again. that's worth a million stars in a review, as far as I'm concerned. I don't, like that. That I don't. That is unbelievable to me, because of, obviously I'm of an age where I do very firmly remember the why Spirit of Shankly started, and
Yeah, of
Hicks and
course.
Gillette and all of that stuff, and so I was involved somewhat, but nowhere near like what those guys did. Unbelievable things at a very 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 difficult time for us. So to get that recognition, obviously was amazing, and the honor is absolutely absolutely huge. Yeah.
Yeah, so you've read the book, you've
Mm.
met David, you've formed a friendship. How
Yeah.
does it go from that to where we are now?
Well, what I did, funny enough, I was very a couple and another kind of fluke was that the commission was given to me to write it at the end of 2019, and then I got a call from the commissioning theatre to say, "Hey, look, would you mind if, for tax reasons, we just sort of pushed it into the new tax year in April 2020?" And I kind of went, "Actually, thinking about it, yeah, that'd be all right, actually." And then, of course, we all know what happens in the spring of
Yeah.
2020, and so it was again a great fluke that for my, I look, I remember lockdown with nothing but total pleasure because, of course, imaginatively, I spent it on Red or Dead. That's what I did, and every day I got up and I first of all, made notes in the book and read it thoroughly, and but then also compiled a 150-page dossier on every match under the Shankly era, managed by Bill Shankly. And of course, we didn't have football. And look, obviously, everyone's listening to this is knows what this is like. It is very strange. It does shape your life. It does shape your reality. And I know a lot of people found it very. It sounds a bit with all the things that are going on. Maybe a touch indulgent to say, it affected people very badly not to have football, but it did. And it was tough for a lot of people. And so I sort of found a way of because of course I sang all the songs Shankly and Live a Bird on My Chest, all the rest of it. But I must say I didn't. Excuse me. I didn't know him and his work obviously as intimately as I do now, and to go back into it and to look at the players that were picked at various points and all these little stories. And I mean, I just picked one at random. It's a guy called Johnny Wheeler who was a sort of journeyman pro who was at the club that Shankly picks for an important game in the promotion season. And they had a bit of an injury crisis, and he was an older guy. And Shankly went to him and buttered him up, told him he was the best thing since sliced bread, and that he was one of his most important, incredible footballers. And Wheeler sets up the goal for Hunt to win an important game in the run in the promotion season in the early '60s. But then I learned that Johnny Wheeler didn't play another game for Liverpool ever again. He was never picked ever again, and he retires with a couple of England caps from the '40s, and he dies in I think 2012, still living in Liverpool. And so these are the stories to me that just are incredible.
It's an untold story, that ultimately, isn't
Yeah,
it? Yeah,
yeah,
that's just something really unique to that. And as I mentioned right
yeah,
at the top, it was
yeah,
informative to me, and I consider
yeah, yeah,
myself, quite
yeah.
a well-versed Liverpool
Oh,
fan in the history. You know what I mean? But still, stuff
of
like
course,
that
yeah,
is
yeah,
fascinating. And there
yeah,
was
yeah,
little tidbits within the play that I was like,
yeah,
I never knew that. There was a
yeah,
story.
yeah,
It's numerous ones that I would highly, highly, strongly recommend anybody going to watch it if they're able to. It's honestly
yeah,
phenomenal.
yeah,
Obviously, the main sort of theme, there's lots of different angles, but
yeah,
it's the
yeah,
love affair and it's Shankly's work ethic and
yeah, yeah,
it's
yeah.
all that sort of stuff. And it really comes out his passion, his commitment. But one of the
Sure.
more interesting angles I think you touched upon
Mm,
really, really
mm,
well
mm,
was
mm.
his relationship with Matt Busby and Jock Stein,
Yeah,
because
that's right.
it looked as though, and you obviously did all the digging, all the research
Yeah,
you
yeah,
just
yeah,
mentioned
yeah,
into this. It looked as
yeah.
though they were the only two people really who Shankly not feared, but had such an utmost respect for that
Yeah,
they were the people he would listen to.
yeah, that's exactly right. And that's how it comes out in the play. They're the only people that can kind of look him in the eye and tell him the truth.
Yeah.
Because he's such a force of personality. I mean, even in a sense, Ness, who's obviously a titanic figure in his life and played brilliantly by Alison Mackenzie in our production. Even even that characterization, she's very wary of Bill, and she's, but both Matt and Jock Stein, John, as Shankly called him, could look him in the eye and tell him the truth. And of course, the interesting thing is, in another world, Matt Busby, had Liverpool not been such a well, not exactly a basket case, but they certainly missed an opportunity by not hiring Matt Busby to be their manager in the war period, because obviously Busby was a successful player with Liverpool, won the league championship with them in 1947, and so you've got so Busby has a real connection with Liverpool, and the the tales are that it was Busby that suggested to Tom Williams, TVR Williams, the chairman, that they should hire Shankly as manager, when they missed the opportunity to hire Busby. And one of the reasons they didn't hire Busby is because Busby wanted control of picking the team, signing the players, all of which was done by a board at this point, like the old England cricket team. There was a load of old men who sat around and decided who they were going to buy and who was going to play, and the managers just sort of, broadly speaking, decided on the tactics. So there was a profound connection, both with Busby's, not very well publicised love of Liverpool Football Club, but also that the two were great friends, men cut from the same cloth. Similarly with Jock Stein, these are men that come, all of whom have mining backgrounds, all born within 30 miles of one another, but who transformed football as we understand it today. And both in terms of, when you think about Shankly going down the mine at 14 and what that experience is like, we kind of, we imagine it, maybe it's more governed by what we imagine the miners, electric torches on your hats, but for in the 1930s in Scotland, mining was a tough business. And it seems, if you think about what that life is when you're 14 and you're breathing in that coal dust and it's black, dark and bloody dangerous, the idea that so many of those men decided they were going to get very good at football because it was outside where they could see the sky and the sun, and they could exercise, all of that stuff. And so many of these guys really wanted to get good because they really, really wanted to not go down the mines and not work in that way. So the work ethic combined with a very not an academic or abstract socialism, a real grounded socialism, the importance of relying on your teammate, and also playing with a lot of very hungry, skillful footballers, really was the crucible that made Busby, Stein, and Shankly. And without them, obviously football takes a very different turn.
Yeah, it certainly does. Yeah, you're right. It's fascinating to think about that being the football being the escape, quite literally, from what would have been the minds. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Listen, I've already said a few words that sort of try and portray in broad strokes how incredible I thought this was. It really was. Emotional, funny, thought-provoking, challenging at times, informative. For you, obviously it was a labour of love, given your passion for the football club and Shankly in the city, moreover. But how was it and how difficult was it? Because it meant so much to you, clearly, because it was so close to your heart. Did you find this particular project even more testing than the ones you've done previous?
Without a shadow of a doubt. I mean, I'm still recovering. Like it's absolutely not lumps out of me, for all sorts of reasons. It's the first. Strangely, it's the first show I've done in Liverpool. I've been lucky enough to work all around the world, and I've been very, very lucky in that respect. But it's the first show I've done in Liverpool. So all my family is still here. I mean, I funny enough, I talk a lot. I don't know whether you know the Leanne Best, the actor. We're at school together, right? And so we're the same kind of age, and we there wasn't loads going on in the city in the mid late 90s when we decided we decided we kind of had to move away, and of course our lives then take a certain path, and I hadn't moved back since, but I've come back every other week during the football season, and my family are all still here, but it really really mattered that they could feel proud of it, and of course doing something about Shankly in the city of Liverpool, knowing as well, like all the guys I got the match with or known over the years, and my living nightmare was, I thought either, it'll go really well and that'd be great, but the living nightmare was getting chased down the Lancs with pitchforks and flaming torches because I fucked it up.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. Yeah,
but as it stands, yeah, touch wood, it seems to have gone down really well. But as you can imagine, you want it to be a tribute to the man, and but also importantly, maybe you're the same. When I was a kid, I didn't, I'm actually from a family of blues, a family of sort of not match going blues, but they go every now and again. But my first real connection with like real passion for football was actually videos that were knocking around called things like 101 Great Goals, which are goals from George Best um and St. John and Keegan and then there's the documentary videos, and of course all those documentaries about the club are fantastic, and some brilliant ones, but they do have a very particular flavor. It's the 1950s, and here's a load of sad dockers, and then suddenly it's the Beatles in the 60s in color, and then it's then Bob Paisley and Liverpool take over the world, fantastic, and everyone cries, and that's, don't get me wrong, that is fantastic, and that is definitely how I came to think, oh, this is very different from what my family are doing,
yeah,
sort of vaguely keeping an eye on Everton. And this was something that really spoke to me. But I really did want to do something different. And maybe because I am from the city and people will know me from the mat, like they know I'm for real, so
yeah, yeah.
that maybe I could do something that was a little bit different, that didn't rely on the same sort of mawkish cliches. But what felt very, very important to me is not that the really important thing is not that like Shankly arrives in 1959 as a Superman, is that Shankly arrives in 1959 as a man, as a very flawed man, as a real human being with real world problems, and his graft and his passion and his guiding philosophy that he also lives. His politics is lived. It's not theoretical. It's absolutely lived. And through his work, he builds something, a working class institution that sets this city on an independent path and gives this city a different identity and gives the Liverpool supporters maybe something more than football to care about. And that is incredible, and particularly in a world where we are very, very cynical about political leadership of any kind, and particularly when it comes to political leadership from the left or from the progressive left or whatever, which I count myself as a sort of despairing, as a despairing left leaning, I suppose you would say, socialist. And what is next? Okay, the planet's going to hell in a handcart. Trump is in the White House. All of these, all these terrible, terrible things. Okay, fine, but what are we going to do about it? And it seems to me that Bill Shankly could once more lift our eyes to the horizon to think about the world in a different way. This could have happened in Sheffield or Newcastle or Nottingham, but it didn't. It happened in Liverpool because someone turned up and someone grafted and cared and worked, and the world was made, and the world will be unmade, and it will be remade again, but it can be remade. And it was, to me, the most inspiring thing about the book and the granular detail in which David goes into is that Shankly is not a Superman. Shankly is a man, and all the more super for it.
Absolutely. And you can certainly see, his
Mm.
human qualities and the fact he
Yeah,
was just a man post
yeah,
Liverpool resignation, because the transition
yeah.
from him to Paisley and the way that's portrayed is sensational. Like, it really is. But you did it justice, just to say that right now, you did it justice and then some
Oh,
for me. But
yeah.
as you touched upon there, I can imagine it would have been an
Oh,
undertaking of,
mm,
extreme
yeah.
proportions for somebody like yourself
Mm-mm,
who clearly held this in such high
yeah.
regard. And you knew the eyes of the world had been watching. And yeah,
Yeah. Well, yeah, for
you've done
sure.
it. You've pulled it off. You really, really have.
Thank you.
On the cast, on the cast,
Yeah.
did you always have somebody in mind for Bill? Was it always going to
Yeah,
be, or and for the others as well? I imagine it was quite important for you.
yeah,
Again, this is for Liverpool, and you're right in saying it could have been
yeah,
anywhere. By the way, it could have been Huddersfield, most definitely.
yeah,
But this is for Liverpool, the people of
yeah,
Liverpool.
yeah,
Was it something that
yeah,
you
yeah,
sort of
yeah,
was it a non-negotiable that the people of Liverpool would be on that stage as well?
yeah, yeah. So two things. Like when I'm writing, there's a thing, just a thing I sort of try and say, what you can get lost in it. So I sort of try and sum things up in like a sentence. What's it about? Well, this is a play about Bill Shankly's love affair with the people of Liverpool, and that took me in a couple of very interesting directions. And so, first of all, I needed a Bill, and I'd always imagined Peter Mullen doing it. I was a great admirer of his work. We had a mutual friend, Stefan Goloszewski, who wrote and directed a show called Mum, which Peter was brilliant in. But of course, I knew him from his film work and both as a actor and as a director writer. So the first thing I did through Stefan was send Peter an email, which kind of read, "Dear Peter, unfortunately for you, you're the only person that can do this. So all the best. Let me know." And a week or so later, he wrote back and went, "Yeah, unfortunately, I think you might be right." And so it was born. But his condition was that we had to do it with a community company, and that was always the plan. I'd done something similar in York, for the York Mysteries, where we did a whole biblical cycle of medieval mystery plays with 150 community actors in the cathedral in York Minster. It's done every 20 years inside the Minster, and we were lucky enough to get the one in 2016. And so we were, so I'd had a bit of experience of doing that before and knew what a fantastic thing it was, actually. The legacy of it is incredible. And, cities get the civic culture they deserve, and if you participate and you turn up, you can achieve amazing things. And this is, what we did with the community company. And so I've been rehearsing them for 6 months. The principal rehearsals were 5 weeks, but I've been rehearsing with them for 6 months. 40 people, 150 showed up to audition. Everyone was involved, by the way. So some of the recordings you hear of the crowd were made
Yeah,
from the people who came to audition. So
amazing.
everything that's in that play is made in Liverpool by the people of Liverpool, the people who turned up to the auditions. But the people, obviously, you had to have a cut off somewhere, and 40 was about as many as we could with the 12 pros.
Yeah,
So 52 was about as many as we could fit on the stage, and house. And so we had, so that to me was very important. And at times, because people tell you, of course, you can't put up 52 people on the stage. It's crazy. But we kept at it. And Peter, when, every time I sort of was slightly havering, thinking maybe we could not. And he said, "No, listen, no community chorus, no Peter." And that, and his absolute, well, I was committed to it, absolutely. But it was his absolute commitment to it as well that really pulled me through at times when I was, told that it was too big an idea and it shouldn't happen.
that's fascinating. Yeah, I didn't know. You obviously didn't know that. I'm made up. I asked the question now.
Mm,
Yeah, I thought that was
yeah,
led by yourself, and it's fascinating to hear that it's led by Peter, the man who
yeah.
portray. And listen, I know he's not
Well,
here, but
yeah,
the way he played Bill, that's
yeah,
next level. I've never seen anything like that. That's
yeah,
Bill Shankly.
yeah. Me neither. Yeah.
Unbelievable.
No, it absolutely was. And again, no, well, he's not only known as a great actor and also a great sort of a great proponent of the modern. Like, he's working with Ken Loach. He's working in cinema verite. He's not known for classical roles on the stage or rom-coms or whatever it might be. He's always seeking out something that feels new and modern and meaningful. And so, yeah, I offered him initially. I said to him it was going to be 150, and then we've come down to 40, and he was so. In talking about that, it's a very interesting dynamic too, because that word affair is really interesting. Because David said, we said two things which were very useful to me when I was writing. He's a quite a dour Yorkshireman, David, and at various points, and I'd be gushing about some incredible bit in the book or some brilliant thing that Shankly had done, and and David every now and again would say to me, Philip, some people fucking hate Liverpool Football Club. So that was good to bear in mind.
Yeah, keeps you in
But
check.
yeah, it keeps you in check. and I go, oh yes, of course, good point. And then, but the other thing was that that this word affair was really important, and that really released something very interesting into the mix. And it does sort of feel like an affair, like that Ness understands it, but it's this is something that Bill has another woman, and it is something that and he says himself in very many of the later interviews, he says it in his resignation speech. I lived the life of a monk. I'm only ever happy with my family, but I didn't see enough of them. All of those very, very human regrets. And of course, on the opening night, as total fluke would have it, I turned 46, which is the age that Bill was when he took over at Liverpool, which in an age when people were dying much younger, that is when you consider what he did.
Yeah.
To me, that's an astonishing fact that, one of the things that I think makes the scene between him and Paisley so poignant is when Bill says, how old are you? And of course, Paisley reveals that he's only 5 years younger than Bill. So I can't really do the maths, but I guess that means that 46 plus 15, 61. So Paisley's 56 when he takes the job, and that is, which again, in modern terms, is still incredible when we think about, the age of Slot now, Hersler at Brighton and Hove Albion, and managing to get younger, because of course you just need that kind of unbelievable energy. But to me, that was again incredible, and also part of the I suppose the agony of this man, who yes achieved something incredible, but and there's the question remains, at what that it has an impact on his domestic life and his marriage, and not all negative, because of course if Ness were here now, she'd say, well, look, we were brought up in poverty, and this job kept food on our table, and so I was quite happy to do my thing. But still, it's nevertheless part of the play, because the chorus is a sort of mainly a very very positive thing, but it's a double-edged sword, and it does, because if you remember that them with their hands out grasping for tickets from Jimmy McInnes, and the pressure that their presence puts on Bill, that unlike anywhere else, we do put a lot of pressure on our managers. And before Kloppo, I think a lot of our managers left, but Hodgson aside, obviously, but pre-Kloppo, our managers leave in ambulances or straitjackets, and so it was, while like everyone, devastated when the greatest man of my life, Jurgen Klopp, left us.
Yeah.
With a bit of time to reflect, I'm so pleased that he left while he was fit and he was healthy, and clearly he's got a lot of living to do, and he's going to enjoy his grandkids, and that to me makes me very happy, and I think he deserves it.
Yeah, I concur with that entirely. And whilst I was absolutely, like you, heartbroken when it got announced, and the ensuing months that followed were just sickening. But you're right, and I think having seen one of those more formulaic documentaries recently released on Amazon, unlike this, which is anything but, when you see Klopp at the end almost crestfallen, but still saying it's going to be better than maybe he left us and all that sort of stuff, but you can see just the energy completely taken out of it. And now you can see the flip side of that. Now he's living his best life and he looks more rejuvenated than ever. So absolutely great, absolutely great. Just finally then, on it, I mean, we've touched on it once or twice already, but the pride you must now feel in being able to have these conversations, now that it worked, there must have been doubts along the way whether it even work as a play. It's worked and then some, and the feedback, the reactions. I was there the other night it was the press and guest night. It was remarkable. The people in the room, by the way, was, and they were just in awe of what they've watched. For you, again, having played such a role in it, you must feel immense pride.
Oh, I do. I mean, there was an amazing sort of five-a-side team that I met that night that I would really pay good money to watch. Bruce Grobbelaar, Phil Thompson, captain, Sammy Lee, John Barnes, John Aldridge, managed by Roy Evans. I mean, that was pretty special. And afterwards, a hand is thrust into my hand, and I look up, and it's King Bruce Grobbelaar, and of course, I've worked with actors and all around the place, and I take it very much in my stride these days. But sports stars, footballers, I start to get tongue-tied and I say something incompletely daft, like, thank you for some of the best days of my life supporting Liverpool, that sort of thing. And he says, oh, and then he starts crying. He says, this was 1,000 great nights. And I sort of couldn't believe it. Talking to Bruce, Bruce Grobbelaar, as if he's my close personal friend. But that was, that was obviously a real kind of pinch me moment. And watching John Aldridge lead the standing ovation was pretty special. It
I
has
was
to be
sat next,
said.
sorry, just quickly on that. I
Yeah,
was
yeah,
sat next to John, literally to
yeah,
his left.
yeah,
And you're
yeah,
right, he was the first to get up. I was going to mention that.
yeah. That was pretty special too. And of course, what's been really interesting, because obviously I went to the derby the night after, and there was in my usual seat in the cop, and something occurred to me, because we've had these reviews that have come out in the national papers, which are Peter Molyneux's incredible, this is incredible, 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 no sort of word of criticism, but kind of 4 stars, from the Guardian and the Times. And I kind of went, this is like the referees at Anfield. They are just determined not to be swayed. These
Yeah.
people, they want to come in and context review my play, the cunts. But no, excuse my language.
That's fine.
But yeah, there was that feeling of, well, they were somehow not going to be swayed by what was a pretty incredible atmosphere. And look, in all seriousness, I'm I find it very difficult to watch now and be around, because it does just make me bloody cry. Partly because that's not being like pleased with myself or conceited, but it's really about the pride in those 40 community actors. Like, one example, Helen Jones comes into an audition. First thing she said to us is, I was just passing. I heard this was happening. My husband doesn't even know I'm here. She's a pharmacist in town, and a proper job, all this. Never been anywhere near a stage. She's fantastic in this. Young Daniel, who has that little scene at the very end of the play with Peter,
Mhm.
he talks about not being able to afford to go to the
Yeah.
match. Never been anywhere near a stage. And now Les Dennis has got him a radio drama for the BBC playing a young Pete Best. So this kid's incredible. He didn't even know he was, he came because he's he's match going, goes with his dad. He's a massive, massive fan. His ma's a nurse. And he actually came along with her because she sort of fancied getting involved. And I said, who's that? And so Daniel, you said all of these stories. Beatha Sunjaya, who's um, a postgrad student at the University of Liverpool from Indonesia. And she just arrived in the town, and she wanted to get to know some people. So she found out about this and thought, well, I'll come. And then suddenly there on opening night, Beatha's mum and her grandma and her sister had all come over from Indonesia. And there we are standing in the Royal Court having a conversation about Bill Shankly. And now this is all going to go back to Indonesia. And so when I get emotional about it, when I get teary about it, I think about these fantastic, amazing people, and how how blessed. And this feels really kind of Oscar speech, and I don't mean it to, but how blessed I feel in coming from this city, and the fact that anywhere I go in the world, I never say I'm from England, of course. Where are you from? I'll say I'm from Liverpool, and instantly people smile and they say, we've got something to talk about straight away, either the football or the music. And that to me is, so I feel such an unbelievable pride in the achievement of the community company. The fact that this could not have happened in any other city in the world. And if this was happening at the National Theatre, you would never hear the end of it. It would have cost 5 times as much. There'd have been 5 times fewer people. And but the fact is, in a really like understated Scouse way, the court has backed it. They're incredible. Those guys, what an asset, what a thing this city has got in the Royal Court. So anyone who's watching, if you can't make it to Red or Dead, go down and support it, because it is unlike anywhere else in the world, and a very sort of understated, very Scouse way. They just helped us get on with it, get it on a stage, and there it is, for good or ill.
Yeah. For what it's worth, I wouldn't have, yeah, I wouldn't have done a single thing different if you had your
Yeah,
time again, and
yeah,
not a single thing, honestly, because from
oh,
my experience of it, it's truly remarkable. And as I said, right at the top,
oh,
it's really
yeah,
not my cup of tea, but my word, it was something else. And I would so
yeah,
strongly. Normally, I'd ask you
yeah,
to tell people why to go
yeah,
and watch it, but I feel like it's better coming
yeah.
from me. You've said
Yeah,
so
maybe,
many,
yeah,
but
maybe.
honestly, I cannot stress enough how much people should go and watch that. It's not just from a Liverpool football point of view, but again, it's got every single angle covered. Truly
Yeah.
stunning, like absolutely stunning. You
Oh,
should be so
well,
proud of it.
it means the world.
And thank you for joining me for this chat about it as well. And thank you for
Not
being
at
a part
all.
of making it because yeah, unbelievable
Well,
work.
look, yeah,
Go.
listen, I know, I plug into the Redmen from time to time, so it's been, a friend to me as well. So I'm very happy, and I hope all your viewers and listeners, if they go see the play, enjoy it, and hopefully we can all be in town in May, saluting the league champions.
That's the plan. I'll see you there, Philip. Top man for joining me once again. Massively
All
appreciate your
right.
time. Everybody else, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening.